Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 8 of RaiderIO's weekly No Leaver. I'm your host, Sean, and today I'm joined by Max. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Max, let's before we get started with the questions, we have some questions we want to talk to you about the raid. Obviously, that's super important. I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as a Canadian if I didn't ask you, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup this year?
Oh, that's fun. I mean, the Panthers retain basically all their core, and they're pretty good. And they have the experience doing it. I would love the Oilers to win. Just I don't really care about Edmonton. I just think McDavid's like the best hockey player ever, so he definitely deserves to have a cup, especially after the last couple of years if they can shore up their goaltending. But there's honestly a lot of teams that are really good. But to keep it short, because I know WoW players and hockey players don't usually mix, so I would say hopefully Edmonton for me.
Hopefully. Nice. I've been a Penguins fan since like the early 90s. I'm just praying Sidney Crosby doesn't get traded to the Canadians.
Yeah, that'd be kind of sad to see Sidney end his career somewhere other than Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so yeah, you're right. There's probably not a huge overlap in the Venn diagram of WoW fans and hockey fans, so we'll move right on into it. Let's talk the race to world first. Manaforge Omega. You recently became the first guild to clean sweep an entire expansion, unless you include the 10-man raids. I think it was back in MOP for another guild. But first, like full 20-man mythic clean sweep. First three-peat in ever, maybe? For a very long time. What sort of takeaways?
Echo three-peated from Sepulcher to Vault of the... there was somewhere in there where Echo won 3, I'm pretty sure. Also, Method won Old Year, Battle of Dazarlor, and Eternal Palace.
Oh, right. Yes.
So there's been multiple 3s. Also, another clarifying thing is it depends on how you look at tiers, like how tiers used to be. Like, for example, if you won Emerald Nightmare and Trial of Valor, let's just say this theoretically, this didn't happen, but let's say you won Emerald Nightmare and Trial of Valor, but then lost in Nighthold. You came in second, third, whatever. You would have lost that entire raid tier. Similar to like the upcoming raid, where I'm sure we'll talk about that later, where like they're releasing them separately. It's not really going to matter who wins like the first couple raids. It's like if the last one is the last one and it's the hardest one, like that's going to be the one that determines like the winner of that tier. So the reason I'm mentioning any of this is Method in Warlords of Draenor technically swept that expansion. Like they didn't win Highmaul, but Highmaul was tied to Blackrock Foundry. It was still when they did intro raids like Mogashan Vaults and Highmaul and Emerald Nightmare. Those were not intended to be Old Year or, Nerebar Palace. They were their own lead up to a real raid, I guess you could say. So if you include that, Method swept Warlords of Draenor. I believe Method won every tier in MOP as well in 25-man. They lost Heart of Fear, but again, that was part of one tier in Terrace of Endless Spring, so they ended up winning that raid tier. So yeah, there's 2 qualifying things that are weird about that. I think honestly people have put way too much emphasis on that. There's been guilds winning 3 raids in a row. It just happens to be one expansion. I don't really think it matters personally.
Cool. I dig it. Thank you so much for that clarification. That was great. History lesson right from you. So that's perfect. I really appreciate that. So let's talk Manaforge Omega specifically. That race just ended. You guys came out with a victory. At the end of every race, obviously, there's going to be lessons learned. What are some of the lessons learned that you walked away from, even with the victory? I'm sure you still learned stuff in the race, but what are some of the lessons that were learned in Manaforge Omega for you?
There's a couple main takeaways. We actually went over this we did our post-mortem guild thing we do after every raid on like how to get better. We usually give a couple weeks for the raiders to like let their thoughts settle and then really hear from them. And the main thing, what the officers had to take away of the entire guild was we can't. Okay, so going into this tier, we had won 2 tiers in a row, and I thought in those 2 tiers we won, we played way better than everyone. So what you can do as humans, even though you try to fight complacency as hard as possible, when you truly think that you're just better than other people, it just makes you prepare not as hard. It's natural. Like you simply can't compare the preparation intensity of someone who's hungry and wants to win or wants to come back and win again after losing to someone who has won a lot of times won multiple times in a row, and now thinks that they're better than everyone due to the performances in the past. So that's really scary. And you can fight against that. But again, how good we are in a raid is really how well each individual person prepares. And it just affects some people differently that way. So what we talked about this tier, we feel like if we play our best, we are just going to beat other guilds. We're better than everyone. But you can't just show up to progression. And this definitely affected us this tier. We showed up at the beginning and we weren't playing our best. We were playing our floor, you know? And like, we are not good enough. And we made the mistake of assuming we were good enough. You know, you don't really make decisions that way, but that's how it ended up. Like, you can't just show up and win. You're not good enough. We are not good enough to just show up to a raid and have shitty preparation, terrible tech issues during the race, and overall just low motivation. You can't do that and beat a guild like Echo. It's not possible. Well, this tier it happened, but like, it was so insanely close, and we probably deserved to lose because of that. So our main takeaway from the raid is just, you know, winning feels great, and there's so much, this lasts so long when you win, like until the next tier, that like you have to like just mentally rewire yourself to be a hungry up and coming guild that wants to win rather than a guild that's won a lot. It's just really hard to keep the same level of preparation in those two different mindsets. And I think fighting that and acknowledge that that happened, I think is really important. Like, you just can't say it didn't happen and then learn from it. You have to own that, you know, like I own that. That's certainly on me. It's on a lot of people in the guild. We just did not show up and play our best this raid at all, but we still won. So that's cool.
Yeah, it is. That is cool. I like that you definitely play, like, you rise to the level of your competition. We see it in sports a lot. You know, the best team will play a team that's lower, and then they'll put a little bit less effort into their preparation and stuff like that. And it sounds like a bit of that bug maybe caught you guys. What were some of the ways that you pulled out of it? Because you definitely rose to the occasion. Like, you must have at some point identified, hey, we gotta figure out what we're doing wrong here.
So we had a conversation as a guild on Nexus King, and it was right after our reclear. And there had just been a lot of stuff that happened in the first week. We felt like we weren't playing at the same level. We absolutely had some preparation mistakes, especially with Fractalus. And everyone knows that, and we owned it. But, like, it's good to just get that all out in the air. Like, hey, guys, we f***ed up here. Like, we lost some time on this. But, like, hey, we had a really fast reclear. We can kill this boss tonight. We can get information on Dimensius before we go to bed. And we can win this race. And that refocusing really helped us, that we were a completely different guild after that conversation and after that reclear from the time that happened until we finished the race. And to tell you why that didn't happen initially, or why, I mean, I don't know. I truly don't know exactly why we came in so flat this raid. But, you know, that's a lot of stuff is being done to address that for the future.
Can you, without giving us too big a peek behind the door, give us like some of the examples of things you're going to do to prevent that in the next race?
No.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I understand. Okay, so it's great to hear that especially that being able to take that internal look at the team and then at the race itself and say, okay, this is where we made some missteps and we need to address it and find out a way to address it. Let's talk raid specific. How did the initial tuning of the raid feel when you got in there, based from PTR into the actual raid itself? Did it feel like Blizzard hit this one?
There were a couple things they did really well with tuning, so I'll start with that. The first couple bosses I feel like were totally fair. You know, I think the first boss is actually one of the better first bosses they've made in a while. If you want a free 2-box, Soulbinder is super easy. Lumathar challenges you a little more, and then it starts going from there. But I think the first 3 bosses were tuned quite well. I think the bosses later, so specifically Dimensius, I think you could argue is like pretty perfect tuning. However, there was one annoying bug we were made aware of recently where people were like getting one shot a lot in P1, like 100% of their HP in like 0.5 seconds, and apparently the ads in P1 were casting every like 0.3 or 0.5 seconds on some bulls instead of every 2 seconds, which is why raid damage would sway a lot. So that was just murdering people. We just found out recently it was supposed to be 2 seconds the whole time. So that was one thing. So like outside of that, which every guild killed it with that bug, I think their tuning, like every single phase was like exactly right. Like P1 was possible without Lust, but extremely hard. P2, extremely hard to replicate. P3's damage check was actually not hard when you move Lust to it, but the phase was so hard in itself that I feel like that was fair. Nexus King probably could have had a little bit more HP, but maybe the issue is just it just died in the second reset. We've had that happen a couple times now where like one-armed bandit maybe would have been crazy hard tuning. Muggsy would have been crazy hard, but like they were tuned, I think, to be killed in week 1, and you just fight them in week 2, and you're just so powerful that they end up dying. I will also say Fractalus's health was pretty much perfectly tuned for what you were able to do if you ignore the like one tanking thing, but that was at least a fair one tank instead of like Nexus Princess, for example. But they also had, so I'll give them points for that. They had completely horrendous tuning on Forge Weaver. I don't know why this has happened now for, I guess you could argue 3 straight raids, but 2 straight raids with the 4th boss, and in the first raid it was the 5th boss, but then, you know, Rashinam was so easy that basically it was like a 4th boss, and they have this like massive difficulty spike. I think it's terrible for the game. I don't think it's on purpose. I've heard people say like, oh, well, they tune some things for the race, and then they nerf it after that, and like it's all intentional. No, it's not, because like they also panic nerfed Soul Hunters after that when we were progressing it, and it was perfectly killable with 7% more HP, and then they nerfed it anyway. That's clearly a reaction to how hard this boss was. Fractalus was way easier than Forge Weaver. Like it doesn't. If you're going to make bosses that and use the logic that okay, only the Race to World First guilds are going to see these fights, so why not make them hard, right? These other guilds are not going to get there yet. Okay, that could be true of a later boss. Like, why not move if it's all intentional? Why not move Forge Weaver's difficulty to Sludgefist? Why not have it ramp later to where that logic actually makes sense? But really, what happened is only a couple guilds in the world even killed Forge Weaver in the first week, and it's like there's not the Race to World First guilds and everyone else. There's a large, like, decaying skill level and raid time level where there were hundreds of guilds, including some of the best guilds in the world, that were just sitting on the 4th boss, having easily killed the first 3 and being like, what am I even doing here? Like, there's no reason to even do this. The thing that happens in the middle of the raid now, where if I were to draw a picture of like the raid difficulty scaling, is it's like easy, 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 impossibly hard, medium, medium, and then whatever you normally get from a second to last boss and a last boss. That just makes no sense to me. I don't know why they're doing this. My theory is that like 8 boss raids are too few, and there actually needs to be more than 8 bosses in a raid, ideally 10, to have like a realistic difficulty curve. And yeah, I just want them to work on that. I think it's completely bullshit for a ton of people who play this game, and it just doesn't even make sense. Just make that boss that hard just later in the raid. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. Would you shift Forge? Like, would you physically move Forge Weaver to a later spot and leave the tuning on Forge Weaver as is, or would you rather than see that difficulty just Forge Weaver gets easier and somebody else gets harder?
So, I mean, generally speaking, yeah, like I'm okay with bosses as hard as Forge Weaver. There were multiple bosses in this raid that were way harder than Forge Weaver. So, you know, obviously that's fine. I just don't understand why the difficulty curve wouldn't be better. If you're one of these guilds that, in Nerebar Palace, where like a World 200 guild is on Brood Twister at the same time as us, that makes no sense. Like something is clearly wrong with that. And then the World 50 guild gets close to killing Brood Twister, only to have the boss astronomically nuked the next week to where they feel nothing on the kill from what they basically wasted their time in week 1. They could have just started in week 2 and been at the same place. I just can't see an argument for that making any sense. You can make bosses for the race, sure, but do them late enough in the raid where it is actually true that we will be there and no one else will. That is typically true of an end boss. It's typically true of a second to last boss. And it's just simply not true of the 4th boss. So I'm not sure why this keeps happening. I'm positive it's a mistake. I strongly feel that they are not doing it on purpose. I just think it's sometimes you do bad stuff, and they've been bad at tuning or mid bosses for some reason.
Yeah, I think I remember Morgan Day actually specifically addressing it in an interview as well, saying they don't want that mid raid wall, that they want a smoother curve. And then the next raid they gave us Sprocket Mark, or not Sprocket Mark, they gave us Sticks.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. They've mentioned it multiple times in interviews where they're like, yeah, we don't want that to happen again, and then it just happened for 3 straight raids. It's mind blowing to me how some higher level person doesn't step in and just like, okay, this isn't going to happen this time. I feel like it really matters. It's one of the it's the only time, and I'm not talking Race World first. I'm talking any guild. The only time that raiding isn't fun is when you are fighting a boss that feels unfair to you or like the worst person in your raid, right? Because like a lot of times with guilds without skill parity, you are achieving mastery on a fight on a certain point, and you basically can't kill it until your few weakest players get to that same point. And then the time you spend after you achieve mastery and waiting for that person feels really bad. When you make infinitely hard bosses early in the raid, you are just making that feeling so much worse. That I think it just promotes a bad raiding experience. It also makes it harder for people to get into raids, like get into raiding as a hobby. I just really strongly think it's bad.
Yep. I don't think you're gonna have anybody disagree with you on that. It's a W take. Is that what they say? What the kids say?
Yeah, they be saying that.
Thanks. Appreciate that. One of my favorite parts from the Race the World First, your social media team, the Liquid Guild social media team, absolute bangers. It was all fire. But there was a short where it came out and they went around the event and they were asking everybody, hey, can you describe the race in 2 words? And like to a T, all of the Raiders were like fun, amazing time. One person, it was just game, like all these answers that everybody was having a blast. And they asked you, and your answer was anxiety inducing. Can you elaborate on? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can. I mean, it's certainly anxiety inducing at times. It depends on when they ask me that. Because like I don't feel any anxiety really at the beginning of the race, or even really in the middle. But on the last day, typically there's a ton of anxiety because it's just. I mean, the way I look at it is this: would I feel the way I felt on the last boss if we were going to compete in a new raid within the next month or the next weekend? Like most other esports, if you lose a match, you can work on it, but you get to play next week. The only matches that really have that much weight is like in League when you're at Worlds, or like your literal season will come to an end if you lose a playoff game or the Super Bowl or whatever. There is only one thing for us. We don't get to play next week. We get to play next expansion, which could be a long time away. So there's so much that rides on that. And why it amplifies near the end is you're seeing, it's really such an interesting, esport where people follow it the whole time, but really it kind of only matters what happens at like the very end. That's the only thing that really counts. And that moment having so much impact is like it's your regular season, your playoffs, and your Super Bowl all at the same time, and it's all coming down to one day. And it's just, maybe they asked me on that day or earlier. I don't remember anyone asking me that ever, but apparently it happened, right? So I would say that. I mean, like on that last day, knowing how close they were, knowing how close we were, knowing that a flip of a coin could have happened and I'm existentially sad for 8 months or I feel great is just crazy. There's just very few situations like that. And I don't know, it's interesting that you mentioned me having a different answer than a lot of my guildies, because you're like, well, why don't they feel that way? I don't know. One thing that I've kind of dealt with for years is because for some reason for our guild, people watch me mostly. Like our Team Liquid channel is an amazing broadcast. They've gotten a lot bigger, but typically I will have more viewers and people will watch us through me. Echo doesn't have that. Other guilds typically don't have that. It's usually like a main channel thing. So because of that, when we lose, there's usually a lot of shit that gets thrown my way. Like I remember before we won our first time, it was a daily occurrence for me to deal with some mad EU person just being like, bro, you will never win. Like, you are fucking terrible, whatever. I hated that, right? Like, who wouldn't? So it's just knowing that I'm going to get, like, personally slandered for the next 8 months, which I don't know how many other people have to deal with it at that level. Maybe that's why it weighs so hard on me, being the guy, like the face of the guild, the person that people identify with, right? Like that, there's just a lot of pressure with that, and it kind of sucks sometimes when you lose as that person. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, no doubt. You are very unique in the fact that, like you said, your channel is watched more than the broadcast channel. and it is the only guild that's like that in the Race to World First situation. How do you deal with that? Like, and I know this was one of the things we mentioned we were going to talk about, but like in that situation where you do lose, like, do you have anything? How do you deal with that? Like, sort of overwhelming negativity that can come flying your way. Do you have any techniques that you use? What?
No, I mean, I went to therapy for a bit because, I mean, that shit f***ed me up, like it would most people, I would assume. So that helps a little bit. And then now I think you just have to put less weight. Like, the only sane thing to do is to go into a race, and as a competitor, you go into a race and you're like, winning is the only option and losing is death. It is unrecoverable death. And the problem with that is that it's really fucking unhealthy, because there's another guild that's fucking crazy and we could lose for sure. So going in with, like, you know, at least historically, since we started doing this, basically a 50-50 flip of winning the race or not, that's like, it's just insane to allow yourself to have that big of a downside. So I think part of it is like shielding yourself, and just having the ability to say, like, okay, if we lose to a really good team and we played really well, that's fine. I'm not a failure or whatever. And you can still move on from that. But it's hard to do, because then also if you shield yourself too much and then you don't actually have the same level of passion and enthusiasm for what you're doing because of that, then you're like hurting everyone around you.
Right.
Also, another thing about anxiety, which kind of sucks in the race, is, and I've talked about this a lot, because there's been raids, this didn't happen this raid, but there's been other raids where like during one day or something, I'll get really vocally mad. I'm like, you can tell I'm just pissed off. I'm really unhappy with how we're playing. And the raiders don't respond well to that, obviously, because, you know, if I get mad ever, that is going to determine our pulls. If I am tilted, we are going to pull like absolute shit, because it radiates through every player. So because of that, and I talk every pull, and I can't hide that, the whole like fake being happy. My raiders could see through that in 2 seconds. It's completely impossible. So the reality is, you can't ever just fake being happy, knowing that if you're ever unhappy, you're going to ruin your guild's progression. You have to like mentally rewire yourself to actually just be productive all the time, or when you're getting upset, go around and take a walk, but don't let those words, you know, like, or the tone in your voice really infest in the guild. So I think a lot of the stress that's on me during the race is I'm the only person who can't be pissed off and then show it. If you're a raider, if you're in the raid and you're just having a bad hour or so, you don't really want to talk. You can just not talk and play and then get over it. I can't. If I don't talk during our polls, we're going to do worse. If I do talk and I'm mad, we're going to play like shit. So I have to, like, there's so much pressure on me to not like get upset basically ever, which is like impossibly hard. If anyone else has ever raid led at any level, you will know that like the whole idea where you can never be or sound tilted ever in an entire progression tier when you're doing this for 15 hours a day, it's just so hard. It's by far the hardest thing. And I try really hard on that. I'm really proud this race that didn't happen, but also I joked with the raiders that in the last 2 raids, I got really mad on one boss, and we won by a lot more. So, like, it's possible that there's something to that.
Yeah. Maybe they want you to get mad for that one.
No, they do not. I joked about that in our post-mortem, and they were like, "That no, do not do that. It's so bad." And I was like, "Guys, look, it's a good cook." But yeah, they don't like it.
I love that. It's you pointed out how like the WoW Race to World First is so unique in esports, and that there's not really a comparison to it. So you don't have peers that you can go to and ask, like, hey, how do you deal with this? How do you handle this situation? Do you have any like formal leadership training outside of the race that help you deal, or is this all self-taught? Like, is this stuff just you learn through trial and error?
You just learn through trial and error. I became the raid leader of this guild basically just out of nowhere at the beginning of Legion, and I had no idea what I was doing. So obviously I was really bad at it for a while, and then just tried to get better, and then got better at it over time. Like everything else, you obviously, if you're passionate about leadership at all, and you're someone who's thrust into that position, not necessarily because you were trying to get it, but because you just ended up doing it, you try to just learn from other leaders and stuff like that. There's certainly things I've taken from a lot of leaders in the world of companies and of, you know, nations and stuff like that, where, you know, people can, you know, it's just like, man, that guy really carries himself well. Like just stuff like not having to be the person that's talking all the time. Like, if you're in a meeting with some people, maybe don't start the meeting by saying what you want, because then everyone else is going to tailor what they say based off like what they already know you want, and you have the final say. So like let everyone else talk first, hear what they think before you tell them what you think. So just like a million little things like that. I'm certainly not a perfect leader. I could be a lot better at it. There's other really good leaders in other guilds too, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, you just have to figure it out.
Cool. I dig it. Let's shift gears a little bit here. I want to talk about the two facilities, because this race was the first time you had two separate facilities, one in NA, one in EU, to accommodate all your raiders. Where did that decision come from, and what do you think some of the advantages were of doing that? And was there any disadvantages?
Oh, there's plenty of disadvantages. It sucks. It's like, it's not good. It's not a good thing. Okay. So I think initially we were like, okay, we may have to do this, because for somehow during Team Liquid's time with us, this is the only raid where like the league team was actually in the facility at the same time as us. And when we're normally playing there, we're using like the space that the league team occupies. Now that I think could have been worked around, but I think the league team would most likely, now I'm not blaming this on the league team at all. Like they're great. I actually had a great conversation with them after the tier. But like, you know, Team Liquid definitely, the league team is Team Liquid's baby. Like they would if they could turn the rest of the teams into juice to help the league team, they would do that in a heartbeat, right? So there's that going on. And then I think there was some issues with like, we've had some players from Canada and from European countries come into NA and have issues with like, you know, getting into the country. Like, why are you here? Are you here for work? Are you here for, it's just like a really complicated process. We've had people get like, they've made it to the race, but it was like a really stressful process going through customs and stuff like that. So, and now obviously the, you know, the atmosphere in our country about that kind of stuff is sincere, like really heightened. And I think a lot of our European players were like, I don't want anything to do with that, especially ones that already had previously bad interactions with trying to get into the country, are like, I don't want to go through that again. So then I think that was, I think, the main reason maybe why we're using the European facility. And we have a great, TL has a great facility in Europe. So we were able to figure that out. I would say, what are the advantages? One advantage is, when you have a bunch of gamers that sit inside all day, every day, they don't have great immune systems. So when you travel to an event, you can get sick pretty easily. And then if you get sick and other people get sick, then you're going to play worse. Your peak of play is reduced, and how long you can play at whatever your peak is just less per day when you are ill. Your body is just doing other things rather than playing at the highest level. So simply by reducing the amount of people in one space, you are less likely to get sick. So that's one advantage, which is actually a real thing. A couple disadvantages. I don't think ping is one of them. They play at 90 ping. If you guys have ever played WoW at 90 ping, totally fine. Perfectly fine with that. Some disadvantages are like the food situation. So like like your natural waking cycle. So like humans are hardwired to like wake up when the sun rises and go to bed when the sun sets. There's actually a lot of studies specifically about like graveyard shift workers, for example, which is what I looked into for this, where, you know, they're like way at like higher risk of heart disease and just like generally like less happy, or just people that are awake when the nighttime is there and they're going to sleep during the day. That has long-term effects on your life, right? Now, this is something we're doing for short term. I don't expect a lot of those things to apply, but I can tell you that it's weird. We've done it before. We played out of London for the Eternal Palace race, where we were basically waking up at like 5 p.m., 6 p.m., seeing the sunset as we wake up, going to bed, seeing the sun rise before you go to sleep. That was weird. We slept weirder in that raid than any other raid. So like you probably lose some quality of sleep. Plus, it's hard to like simulate daylight and stuff like that. So there's just some weird stuff that goes on with your body that's not ideal. The food situation, they were given, you know, meal. They didn't have like a manager on site, so like they had to like kind of make their own food. They were given some food at night, but like they had to like reheat it at like, you know, what would be like 5 a.m. their time or 6 a.m. and like there was a lot of issues with that. So like food, they were just basically eating like forageable stuff like rabbits in EU instead of like having any protein for a while. That, I believe, has been remedied if we want to do this again. So that's one thing that'll help. But also another disadvantage, man, you just don't get to see your friends. You've
Right.
competed a lot with these people. You care about a lot about these people. That matters, but also communication matters. A lot of times you're talking about things during lunch that matter. And then you have to go back, and there's just a lot of people who weren't a part of that conversation. So the conversations aren't as productive, and you have to repeat yourself to them, which just sucks. Having all your players in one facility is awesome. So it is overall absolutely worse, but is currently a means to an end. Like, we kind of have to do it.
Right. That's not. I mean, it's good that you had the option. Hopefully, in the future, it'll be easier. Things will be better. We can see everybody in one location again, because that's the dream. Yeah, let's sort of put Manaforge Omega away for a bit. Congratulations on the win. Super well done. It was great to watch, as it always is. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about the race to the world first as a whole. We currently have like the smallest number of guilds actually competing for it that we've ever had. It's been that way for a few tiers now. Do you have any long-term concerns about the health of the race with so little competition?
I mean, people asked me this question 4 years ago, and my answer was like, yeah, it would be better if there was more competing teams as far as like the overall product and the sustainability and how much money we're all making. If it's a better product, we can support our players more, right? Our contracts are bigger. All that stuff matters. That's kind of out of our control a little bit. Like, I guess you could argue it is. It's like, well, you're recruiting the best player from Pieces for many years, and Method, you're recruiting their best players every tier. So how are they ever realistically going to like get to the level of player skill that these other guilds are at when you're constantly taking their best talent? And it's like, you're right. That is absolutely hurting their chances. But also, I don't care about them. I'm me. We are us. We are our guild trying to win. We are worried about Echo's awesome. They're getting better. We have to get better too. We're not just going to take some stand for the betterment of the race to just stop doing this. Like, there's no governing body putting in salary caps or like managing this shit. It's just the way it is, right? As far, am I worried? No. I think it's clearly obvious now that like you could basically, if this is what it ends up being, this is like worst case scenario where us and Echo are just duking it out for like 5 more years. I think people are going to sit down and watch that every fucking time like they are right now. Would it grow more? Like looking like the NFL, when the Chiefs started getting good with Patrick Mahomes and like the late 2010s, people were like, oh, this is awesome. Like, this quarterback's great. Like, I want to see the Chiefs succeed. I mean, certainly I hope they beat the Patriots. They win too much. And then now, and has been for a while, no one wants to see the Chiefs succeed. They've won too much. It's boring.
Yeah.
It's boring seeing the same team win, right? I want to see a new team win. And that's all it takes, is just being successful. You can be the good guys. You can be the underdogs. We've seen this where like, oh my God, I want them to win. They're winning too much. I'd rather it be someone else. It's just how I get how consuming this stuff works. It's just, I don't know what we can do about it, really. Like, and also, let's just say, I don't know, like, would it hurt the product? Yes. But like, a lot of the race is you're watching one team ahead of people due to the reset for like a lot of it. And then it gets really competitive at the end. But the viewership is great throughout. Like, I'm confident if, like, let's just say Echo and Method both died. This isn't going to happen. And then basically we're running a race and we feel like we're going to crank everybody in this race no matter what, but we're just streaming it anyway. I think people would watch that for sure. Is it going to peak at, 250K concurrence at the end when there's like multiple teams going for it? Of course not. There's no way to simulate that, but I think it's valuable even on its own. As far as adding a third team, it's interesting. I don't know how many more viewers it creates. Like, how much more interesting is 3 teams wiping sub 1% than 2? 2 is already like, you're fucking locked in. Like, as a viewer, you can't leave your house if this is currently happening until this ends, if you can help it, right? And that, like, a third team, is it going to make it better? Sure. But really, the increased viewership is probably just people having a third tab open on another monitor, and it's the same people just watching multiple streams. So I don't know. To answer your question, the long story short, I guess, of like, are you concerned about the future of the race with only, not that many people competing in it being a 2-horse race? No. I also don't think there's really much realistically we could do about it, at least as like the guilds. And I don't know. Hopefully another team steps up and starts going for it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think it literally does not get more exciting than the end of this race. where it was just like team for team. Literally two, you know, I have like 4 monitors here, but one of them was Liquid, one of them was Echo, and I was like, "Who is this? Is crazy! Please stop doing this to me." Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from, I mean, I'm sure a lot of fans felt this, where like if you really wanted one team to win, there's probably a lot of enjoyers out there that actually, these are the people who had the most fun that day, are people who genuinely did not care if Liquid or Echo won, but they were just like taking it all in, being like, this is awesome. There's probably not a lot of those people, because people are usually really invested in like one team or two. But shout out those people. I bet you had a hell of a day. But if you're like a Team Liquid or Echo fan, you probably feel the same level of anxiety as we do. You're like watching Echo wipe low and you're like, holy shit, you know? And you're watching us kill it and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they won, because you are that level of invested. I mean, we feel that too, you know, like you're in the middle of it, and you have to compete while doing it, but like obviously we feel that too.
yeah. I've definitely yelled at my monitor or my TV while watching the Dolphins play. So I'm certain there were diehard fans who were doing the same. Why are you taking your break now?
Yeah, I mean, people don't understand breaks. I think in general, I've seen a lot of stuff from fans that are like, why not just play 20 hours a day? Why ever take breaks? And it's like, well, because you play a lot better. It turns out like playing for 14 hours straight with no breaks, you're just, at a certain point, you're going to not play at a high enough level to kill the boss. You need to take a break. And then it just comes down to when do you take them. There was an interesting time in this race where we took a break for lunch, where I was like, oh, I don't know if we do this. We even took a half duration lunch, because you'd hate to take one and then like lose because of it. But like at the same time, if you don't take lunch, you're like pushing back this thing that needs to happen. If you don't kill at the next pull, the pull after that, the diminishing returns, like you are, in an hour, you are going to have hungry, tired raiders that are playing like absolute shit, and you will not be able to kill a boss this hard with that. You have to do that. Ideally, you'd like to kill it before, but you didn't. You know, so you have to make those decisions. They're hard to make, and I, even from my perspective, I was like, we can't be taking a break right now. You know, so I'm with you. I feel like you're not wrong in thinking that. It's just what do you do? You know?
Yeah, it's like going for it on 4th down, right? You just gotta. We made the decision. We're going for it. We're not going to second guess it. It's just this is the world we live in now, and the outcome is the outcome. Yeah, I dig it. Let's look ahead to midnight. Yeah, but just take a look ahead. We mentioned it at the top of the show. Blizzard's doing a staggered raid release, which obviously has implications on the race itself. It's going to have implications on how you guys do this. How many mythic splits are we going to get as we wait for the second, the 2-man raid to launch? What are your takes? What's your outlook on that upcoming raid plan from Blizzard?
I have no idea. Like, I mean, I have literally no idea. Like, are we gonna fly out and stay there for an entire month? No. Blizzard has stated that like they're gonna release the 6 boss raid and the 1 boss raid at the same time. That's also, I think, just heavily assumed it's going to include all of your tier gear and stuff like that. And then they went out of their way to specifically mention that the last 2 boss raid coming out is going to be really hard. So if you look at this raid in general, what they might do, especially with, as we've already talked about, a lot of Styxes and Brood Twisters and stuff like that recently, is they might think of this all as a 9-boss raid, right? And if you look at most 8, 9 boss raids, the last 2 bosses are 80% of the time you spend in the raid anyway, right? So maybe they're just splitting that up, and they're just, you know, the first 6 or 7 boss raid, if you look at it that way, 6 boss plus 1 boss raid, maybe the hardest boss in there is going to be Fractalus, or something a little harder than Fractalus. And that's the point. People can go in and get their tier gear and stuff like that and not have some massive wall at the end. And then they're going to release Silken Cord and Ansurek in 2 weeks. And that's going to be like the real race, which the last 2 bosses are the race, like every time, you know? It could play out like that, but then it's weird. It's like people are getting hyped for the first race, and it's like, what if those bosses aren't hard? And just like the NA reset, we just like crank that shit before they even log in or something. That's a potential problem, right? And then you just have to like, okay, well, 80% of the race is the last 2 bosses, and maybe the only thing that people care about for the race is just that 2-boss raid. That might happen. I think that would be bad for the race as a whole for sure. But it could solve some problems, I guess. You would maybe run less splits on that really hard raid that you're really racing for, but in turn, this is going to be the hardest raid ever, most likely, for anyone in the race who has a job. there are people in Echo and Liquid who have full-time jobs that take time off to do these raids. There's not a lot of them, which is not a surprise, but there are some. You're gonna be locked in for the entire month, as far as I can tell. The thing's gonna come out, the expansion's gonna come out. You're gonna have to level up characters, and then you're gonna do the first raid, and then as soon as that first raid is over, you are going to be splitting Mythic until that next raid comes out, just to have the most eye level possible. You are going to be raiding probably at all hours of the day, unless they do something about this, until that next thing comes out, which is honestly like really tiring. I think a lot of players are probably going to hate that, and you absolutely cannot have a job for that. No one, and like at least in North America, you just can't take a month off of work. That's not a thing. Yeah. So that could be really weird. Honestly, it's a really weird decision they've done, but also like I'm not going to write it off. It could be cool. And it also could be bad for the race and good for the rest of the game in some way, and maybe that's good, right? Obviously, I'm biased towards what I care about, but maybe it's sick for that. I think people have kind of been wanting a like split raid situation for a while. There hasn't been one in a long time, and maybe there's some cool stuff with that. But who knows? But we'll see how it works.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to see. Hopefully, we get to see it on the PTR. I wonder how they'll do the testing as well, where they don't typically test last bosses. So, is there going to be multiple bosses that don't get tested? It'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Probably.
Yeah. One last question about the raid, and then we'll wrap things up. And this is sort of the future of the raid. Blizzard obviously is getting ready to remove some combat add-ons. They've talked about it. You were actually in the announcement video for that, which I think was exciting for a lot of people to see that, hey, they're actually paying attention to what the players are doing, what they're using. And how do you see that impacting the race going forward, the removal of weak auras and combat add-ons that are like the computational ones that are solving problems for you?
So I feel very mixed about it. So we, for a long time, have been a YOLO guild. In fact, we were a lot worse than Echo, or they were Method at the time, for many years, because they had like crazy good weak aura game, and we just wanted to natty do everything. Now that's worse, but it's more fun. So we liked doing that. So the idea where like raid bosses don't require weak auras, but are really cool, fun bosses, which by the way, there have been plenty of examples of this in WoW's recent history, where there have been great bosses that are super hard and are not like there's weak auras doing the fight for you. Plenty of examples. It's the majority of hard bosses, right? But yeah, when you get to a boss that requires a weak aura, so anyone doing Fractalus right now, and you have to reset, you have to like make sure everyone's version is correct, and like you just have a wipe because like your tech isn't working. Like that is the least fun wipe of all time. I hope that never happens again if they can do anything with this. I don't know what kind of add-on crackdown is actually happening next year. Like, I don't know if when they're introducing a lot of these in-game add-ons, they're going to break the other ones. I think the smart thing to do is probably give your stuff some time. Like, look at the cooldown manager. The newest improvements to the cooldown manager on the PTR right now are awesome. It's like a way, way better version. It's going to easily replace some weak aura packages for sure. But it was not like that right away. It needed time to grow. So if you're going to introduce this stuff, give it time to grow before removing the other stuff, so you just don't leave people with like a shittier experience. So I think they need to be really mindful of that. And then also there's another issue. I don't know what this is going to do to raiding as a whole. So what weak auras are, what in a way good raid leading can be, is a crutch. Every guild ever could have killed any boss they've ever killed without a raid leader. It would have just taken longer. In fact, some guilds, even though they have a raid leader in title, don't actually really have one and are basically just pulling the boss without a raid leader. Can you do it? Absolutely. Guilds do it all the time. A lot harder. It's going to take longer. Weak auras are the same thing. You can probably kill every single boss that's ever been killed in the game without weak auras. Would it have been harder? Yes. Now, when you talk about crutches help you more the less good you are. The better you are as a player, what a crutch does is it lowers your cognitive load by helping you in other areas, either via aural help, like you hear something, like press this button. It's like, okay, I don't have to think about that. That's great. This thing is helping me. Now I'm better at the rest of the fight. The better player you are, generally speaking, the higher cognitive load you have available to like play your character and then pay attention to everything else that's happening around you and improvise and all of those things. But that can only happen when you feel comfortable. Now, the better player you are, the less you need these things. So one fear I have with removing add-ons is that they are they are increasing the delta between how good a player can possibly be at this game and what the average like cutting edge raider is. Because the average cutting edge raider with the, if you just lose all like weak aura help in a raid, is going to get significantly more impactful and more impacted than like a race world first raider. So I'm a little concerned about that. And then the other thing I'm concerned about is, let's say Blizzard nukes these reminders. Can't do reminders anymore. You can't do assignments in game. Okay, what's stopping someone from creating some program, some third-party app that just you have the fight timers all there, you put your notes just like you want to right now, but it's a third-party app instead of in the game, in an add-on, and then it just creates an unlisted YouTube video that you hit play on your 15-second timer on a boss, and it just plays the text reminders for you in your ear as you're going through. As far as I know, that's not against the TOS in any way. You're using YouTube just as much. You would to outlaw that, you would have to not be able to use a YouTube video while playing World of Warcraft, which everyone does. So like, that's some bullshit. So the issue that I have with it is guilds, how annoying it's going to be for a competitive advantage, which everyone is going to try to do in the race, to get around this.
Yeah.
And that is something that I don't want to be a part of. It'd be really easy to say like, hey, no one do this. Well, they will. There was a boss recently, an end boss, that another guild made a tool that bypassed private auras and used some third-party shit. They even put a randomizer on it so it looked like people were actually pressing their macros, and they instantly deleted it after progression and have never talked about it again, right? And then they were never punished, and Blizzard found out about this. So that sets an interesting precedent. How much of that kind of stuff is going to happen once they actually take away this stuff to happen in game? It's scary. I don't want to, if I go into a race and we're trying to do things natty and another team is like doing some crazy shit to basically have add-ons just outside of their game, and then we lose, I'm for sure never doing this again, you know? So like that is like super frustrating to think about. And then not even that, but like the constant worrying of like, what kind of tech, what kind of illegal tech do they have? Do we have to do this? Will Blizzard ban for it? Can they police this?
Yeah.
I don't know. They haven't. So I don't know. That part, just to end it, really scares me, because it just sounds like it would basically, people are so used to doing this now that naturally they're going to try to find any way they can to replicate it. I came up with that YouTube reminder example in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
It's easy to think of ways to do that. But that sounds so fucking annoying. I would just rather not have it be a thing, and I don't think there's any way for them to police it.
No. Yeah, that's tough. Hopefully, I mean, I would really hate for reminders to go, because they're such a big part, especially like a 12-minute boss fight. You're like, I just need to know when to rally here, man. Please just let me keep this.
And honestly, this game is so hard. Like, PvE WoW rating is so hard at this level, to where, like, not even the Race to World first level, but, like, having your guild the ability to, like, have those reminders or whatever is so OP to, like, it's just going to make you take a lot longer to clear a raid. And is that better for the game? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, could you make the game where you don't want those reminders? But, like, it's just such a vastly different version. It is absolutely true that there is, like, has been an arms race in, like, you can have these tools to solve these things. They create harder problems to solve, and that just continues forever, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they take this away, but those first couple tiers with this stuff gone is going to be very weird. And I'm interested to see how it plays out, but also terrified.
Yeah. Are you prepared to expand the 21st man to 22nd, 23rd, and 24th man, and have someone dedicated calling healer cooldowns and dedicated calling assignments?
Honestly, I'm really looking forward to it as a raid leader personally, because, like, if you go back and listen to, like, Castle Nathria, I'm just machine gunning shit in a fight, and I'm making up for the fact that we didn't really use a lot of weak auras then.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, my job has been not reduced, it's been actually more impactful, but I've had to find other ways. You have to do smarter things outside of just being able to keep track of all that stuff. But really a big strength of mine is keeping track of all of that stuff. But I haven't had to because of these reminders. Dude, the reminder tool alone is like, just removes a ton of raid leading like necessity. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, but I also think it's weird to have that and then have all this tech and then take it away. I think that's so, it's like the difference between nerfing a boss and buffing a boss. like buffing a boss after someone has already killed it or is already there has such a negative reaction to like just nerfing something that's too hard, where it's like, okay, they're going to take all this tech away, but it might be really shitty because people have gotten really used to it, where if this stuff never existed in the first place, we'd be in a totally different spot. I just think there could be a lot of negative feedback around that, which is why, again, I'm imploring them. If you ever think that you have this WeakAura in-game shit figured out, just know that you're wrong, and you probably need like 6 months to a year more time to really cook it up to where you can remove this shit and it actually works and the game isn't much worse. Because if you're just looking at high-level PvE, if you were to just take out this stuff just right now, the game would be significantly worse, right? And it's going to take time to figure that out. I hope they're willing to do that.
Yeah, me too. That's a good shout out. Blizzard, if you're listening, please just give yourself some time to cook. That's all we ask. Let them live alongside each other for a while. Sir, we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and I know we're going to lose you. You're a very busy guy. I would like to ask one last question to wrap things up, if you're okay with it. And sure. Max, I just want to know, if you could go back in time and give early Max one piece of advice, what would you tell him? And you can't say buy Bitcoin.
Man, I don't know. I mean, it's like you could give him one piece of advice. Like, obviously, if I could transport my entire self back right now, like 4 years ago as a raid leader, I'd be so much better. I'd know so many things. But if I had to pick one thing, oh, wow, man. I'm sorry, this is stun locking me. I have actually no idea. Tell myself. Because, like, I feel like all the stuff I would tell myself, younger self now, I knew then. I just, like, maybe didn't know it as well. Like, I'd tell myself, like, hey, no matter what, under any circumstances, never get mad during a raid. Because that needs to happen. But I knew that then. I just wasn't as good at it.
Right.
It's like it's obvious you should not get super tilted and mad. It was evident a long time ago. It's really fucking hard. Dude, I don't know if I have a good answer to your question. I'm sorry. I don't think I have a good answer besides just like everything. I would just tell them everything.
That's all right, man. Actually, I think that answer you gave was pretty good. You know, I already knew it. I just didn't know I knew it type thing. Yeah, I like that. It's hard not to do what you know you have to do. What you don't know you have to do. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, good answer. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Max, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the chat really appreciates it. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, and if you have any special projects coming up you want them to check out?
Yeah, no special projects. I'm just on Twitch pretty infrequently. So you can go there. Cool. And listeners, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We appreciate it. As always, RaiderIO's Weekly No Leaver will be back next week, and hopefully we see you then. And until next time, have a good night.